It's game time, folks, and that was Axion's Axion Ghost. Link will be in the description. It's game time, and thank you guys for stopping around Kaiser's Castle. Today we're going to have an excellent conversation on the difference between contractors and mercenaries with me and Baz. And he's a soldier. You're now meeting a lot of the people on my inner circle because they're retiring. Everybody's getting out, and including me. But I think there's a lot of confusion out there, and I actually wrote an article on it for a couple places, a couple trades, and put them out there, and some of them got put out, whatever. But the fact remains one thing: there is a distinct difference in the quote unquote contractor, and we're going to delve into that first. The difference between, like, when I first started contracting in January of 2005 and a mercenary, and we will explain the differences in due course. So with that being said, thanks for stopping by, Baz. How you been, brother?
Yeah, busy away, brother, yourself.
Oh, I can't complain. I got the flu or something. So I've been buggered up for the past 2 days, but I was able to get on Jaffe's show last night,
Yeah.
and I had a brief respite, and luckily it was during that time. And but right afterwards, I was hurting like a bitch. But I'm just a cunt like that, right?
Yeah, just getting old, brother. Just getting old.
That's right. Well, anyways, I'm gonna let you run with the contractor side of it, and then I'll put input in. But I want you to riff on that for a while so that everybody can understand just the contractor side of it and the experiences of brothers of yours, which are similar to mine, about the depression of wages, the lack of experience, and there's a place for that in static security. You know that. But I've actually seen them put them on ERTs, emergency response teams, and I've also seen them put them on PSDs and some other little aspects that, for close protection that they probably shouldn't be on. I mean, I witnessed this is no shit. An American, his claim to fame was he was the colonel's driver, but he took a 1 week course at the U.S. Army as a Spec 4, and he that was his claim to fame. And he had to take this PSD course for the Army for a week with no practical app. And because of hiring times, it's the one job Meadsy and I were talking around. Those who got there first just happened to show up first. They were your boss. I
Yeah.
bullshit you not, brother. So go on with it.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Again, greetings to all those who are listening. I know this isn't going out live, but I know the chat will be live as it's uploaded, and we'll have a good sort of natter on there. Yeah, it's. I think what we need to do first is sort of look at the sort of the history between contractors and mercenaries. Mercenary work is obviously the one of the oldest professions
True that.
in history. Selling your services, a sellsword, selling your services as a soldier, as a warrior, as an assassin, um, for monetary, usually for monetary gain. Where obviously private security contracting, private security details, private military contract, whatever guise or sort of tag you want to put on it in this day and age, because it does fluently change due to political will, social acceptance, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because they do want to sort of distance themselves between that label of mercenary, because the word mercenary, and it's been tarred in the past through actions of individuals, which I'll touch on throughout the show. So, I mean, you look at the first sort of military contractors, or the private military companies post Second World War. There was two British companies. One was Watchguard, and the other one was Keeny Meeny Services, which were
Yep.
um, both started and managed and run by ex SAS commanding officers. You know what I mean? So there was that level of expertise there that had been brought in, not only from the SAS slash Long Range Desert Group, but obviously the SOE as well. Because when the war ended, these highly trained operators of all nations needed somewhere to ply their trade. You know what I mean? If they wanted to sort of keep plying that trade post Second World War. What you're going to look at is
For
what
those
the
for
you go
those
on, brother.
on the radio right now, listening to us or on the podcast, I've got to make a couple things. The PMC is nothing more than a private military company. It's the cleaned up version of what they used to call Dogs of War, Soldier of Fortune. This is what they used to be called, but that was when, like Baz is saying, you had people from the SAS, which is the Special Air Service, which also has a water component. They all go through Hereford. And that is the SBS, Special Boat Service. And the SOE is Special Operations Executive, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Obviously, yeah. Like you've got the combat applications group in the States, the Delta Force guys. That's sort of like the SAS, sort of the equivalent over here. And obviously, then you've got this DevGru, which is obviously our version of. Well, our version is the SBS, which primarily recruit from the Royal Marines, where the SAS can recruit from anybody, both Royal Marines and British
Right.
Army and RAF to a certain extent, our Royal Air Force. But primarily the SAS tend to have those from the British Army. Again, the parachute regiment, the infantry regiments, and all that good stuff. But it's open to anybody, pretty much like your SF roles are over there. And again, like
Right.
sort of going back to it, it was sort of after the Second World War where there was not seen the use of the SAS. So the SAS was shrunken quite drastically. Um, and a lot of these guys that were roaming around the North African desert, smashing Rommels, armored columns up, and doing the raids and all that good stuff, that they found work outside of the military post World War II, and it was with a lot of these companies like the Keener Services, who was run by sort of what was then called the Territorial SAS 21 SAS, which is now
Right.
known as the Reserves. It was run by their colonel, and so they were put to work. These guys, sort of post World War II, up until right up until sort of like the 1970s, where there was that, it wasn't as clear cut as it is nowadays. I mean, you said back then. I mean, you say back then that you were a soldier, but you worked from a private firm. You were just known as a mercenary,
Right.
and then you were put to work in several sort of areas around the world, certainly in places like Malaya, Oman, in the Middle East, where you were training and fighting against what we call insurgencies these days.
Yep.
But then it was seen as a dishonourable profession, if you know what I mean, because you weren't doing it for queen and country or king and country or for your nation. You're doing it for money, So it was seen as an honourable profession, where the honour of the profession was within that profession. Outside of it, it was seen as otherwise. Then you
Right.
fast forward to sort of like the um, late 90s, early 2000s, where it really came into its own. You've got your Blackwaters, your Aegis, your control risks. You've got control risk, believe it or not, has been around since the 70s. In fact, I think before the
Yeah.
70s, and
You're
obviously then your triple canopies and your blue hackles and all that good stuff. Where you say you're a contractor nowadays, a private military contractor, and very few people will tie you as a mercenary, because it's just a multi-billion-pound business these days, same as anything. Um,
well. That may be the case in England. Over here, there is a very high degree of. First, I just say I'm a contractor. Period. Okay.
yeah,
Um, and you know what I've done. I mean, I blur the lines. There's time for extra legal, but you know what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about right now, and you are, is the first thing they'll say is, "Oh, residential or commercial contractor," and I just tell them simply, I dabble in both because I've dabbled with the commercial and the residential. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Overseas,
Yeah.
and I just tell them I work overseas. That's it, because that's all they need to know. But the relevant portion is also you have some fuckery afoot companies. Sandline, which became Aegis, is one of the few examples. Remember Margaret Thatcher's son, and all the white shoe boys over there in England
Yeah.
got,
Tim Spicer.
yep, got hemmed up with Lieutenant Colonel Spicer, and then he fell to upwards after Papua New Guinea went down to shitter, and you had people now that Sandline was a mercenary force, and they were doing an old school. It's probably, I think it is the last old school merc hit that was ever done where you actually were toppling a government. And of course, it failed. And then he got a $400 million no bid contract. What that means is they're giving him 400 million to get X amount of troops on the ground in Iraq. That's a fact. And then you had another company, which when I came over in '05, this company was called Custer Battles. You probably remember hearing about them. They went out of business, but all the guys over there didn't know they were going out of business because they couldn't staff it. The Army was like, you're done. You're no longer going to do security here. They were out at BIOP when I landed. Everybody had their resumes printed, and they were passing them out to everybody who was anybody trying to get work because they were stranded. All the leadership of Custer Battles went back home overnight, and then the guys were told, "Oh, you're being replaced, and here's your replacements," and they were out of work. And these are dudes that were just infantrymen, and they had a $100,000 contract sitting in towers back in the day, and in a year, 100,000 for a year. So that was a lot of money for an infantryman back in the day. But anyways, go on with what you're saying. But I had to put the dark side of it on too.
Yeah, so it was the word mercenary. It was bandied about for those who were doing contracting abroad, um, and in some cases it was damaging to the reputation of the companies and the individuals purely because they were inaccurately deemed mercenaries. Now, like I say, you've got the Tim Spicer, the Sandline failed coup, where they were just mercenaries. They were going out there and they were um, doing it for money. It wasn't a government-led thing. You know what I mean? It wasn't a contract. It was from a foreign military wanting to do obviously the history behind it. Obviously, Google is our best
Right.
friend on that. I won't go too much into a history lesson. Um, where there were mercenaries, and then you look at the Angola War with the Colonel Callan incident, where there were just
Yep.
there was some ex British military guys going out there to help with the Angola War, and they were just mercenaries. But mixed in there, you had butchers, you had plumbers, just people that had no business being in a war zone. Never mind
Exactly.
a war zone of such complexity where there was no clear sides, there was no rules of engagement, and it was just if you read the book about Colonel Callan's war, the guy was a fucking maniac. He was executing his own people for minor infractions, committing atrocities, and that sort of like massively painted a black mark over the um, mercenary work in the UK because it was so well publicised about what was going on there. I mean, these guys thinking they were going, and all it was an ad in Soldier Fortune magazine, want interesting work abroad.
Right. Right.
And
that,
it was the romance of it.
that's
Some
how
ex-soldiers. You
that,
go on, brother.
that's how jobs used to be advertised. Was, believe it or not, SOF. And R.K. Brown's dead now. I mean, he was a good man. Colonel Robert K. Brown is who I'm talking about. And when he's talking about Callan, that was a failure. But you got to remember, in Angola, the Angolese, they were fighting a communist insurgency, and sometimes that's what I mean by extrajudicial. Sometimes there is a portion that you will have to instill discipline in different manners, different unacceptable manners. But you have to remember also, uh, a soldier for hire doesn't have even the protection of a partisan. They are kill on sight. That is in the law of land warfare. The Geneva Conventions approve that. If you are a soldier fighting under another flag and it's not your nation, capital S state, it's execute on sight. And that's just the rules of war. And but you also have to look at the positives. I mean, look at General Hoare, Mike Hoare,
Yeah.
Fifth Commando. They did a lot of good, and so did Executive Outcomes in when they were defending different places. And you know what I'm talking about. That was a positive outcome on that level. And a matter of fact, I think Kubis Clausen's is still there. He got his own little scam with fishing. He likes to fish. I think it's the yellow finned marlin or some shit like that. And so he had bought a few boats, and he went up to the government there in Sierra Leone, and or not Sierra Leone. I'm sorry, I just fucked that up. I'm trying to remember the name of the company or the country.
Equatorial Guinea.
Guinea, yes, yes. And what he did was end up telling the government, "Hey, I'll be your customs if people are overfishing because they're overfishing their territorial waters." And so, there's lots of cash in that. So he came up. It's about coming up with your own scam, and so, but that definition of a mercenary, people don't realize. They think, oh, that's not a contractor. He is being paid by a foreign government to do a specific job and to enforce their policies and rule at the barrel of a gun. And I'll let you roll with it, baby.
Yeah, so we fast forward to sort of like when the Twin Towers came down, and obviously without the invasion into Iraq, where contracting really came into its own. Like I was saying to Shove just before the show for a couple of minutes, a good friend of mine left the military just before, about 2 months before the towers came down, and he did his close protection, his hostile environment close protection operators course with a very reputable company over here, and then did some further training for a niche sort of a niche job out in South Africa, and that was all his training. And basically, he went onto the circuit as those towers dropped, and the sort of the demand for contractors, security contractors, private military contractors, not so much in the first sort of opening year or two of Afghanistan, but certainly in 03 and onwards, where you had your security contractors, but then Iraq rolled round, and then it was sort of like both the coalition was overstretched, so it tendered out contracts to private military firms, your Aegis, your Triple Canopy, your Blackwater. That's obviously the most well known one, and there was so many jobs out there on the market that these guys, and there wasn't that many of them back then, were could demand their own prices. Like my friend, I won't mention his name because he's still actually active out in the Middle East. He was commanding 1,100 English pounds. That's pound sterling. So obviously switch off the dollars and you'll find out how much they were on a day. And that was, he was haggling with each company, going, well, this company will give me $900, or we'll give you $1,000. This company are offering me this 1,100. So
we called that back then company jumping. If somebody was going to pay you more, you jumped to another company. Like for the same project, SAIC lost the contract, and they hired in place, and so we all company jumped to MPRI, which is now still owned by General Carl Vuono of the U.S., but it got bought out by it's a communications, L3 Communications Company, which is a major communications company. And that was where I started to see the fuckery fall down on it. And I lost, and honestly, it was because of the corporate government ties. I started to realize contracting just changed. And at that point, I realized that sometimes it's better to go on your own, if you know what I mean, brother.
Yeah, sort of like that self-employed, looking for contracts, and I think that's sort of the majority of it nowadays. What most guys are doing um, is that you're looking for your own. You're not going to be part of a company going into contracts that way. You're just looking, like you said, you have a company jumping, or if you're already in theatre in country, then you're just hipping. Um, but again, like I was saying, there were so many jobs and so few people that these guys were commanding their own pay, their own salary, and there was no argument because
Right.
the contracts, they were just throwing billions at these contracts. Um, Now, did we get the right caliber of people doing those jobs? In most cases, yes. Um, but as you know, Shuff, a lot of these people were just at the right place at the right time, had their hands open and said, "I'll do that job for you for X amount of $1,000 a day or a week or a month, whatever." And it was just right. We need to fill this contract because the government have just given us X amount of $1 million. You know what I mean? So yes, come on board. And like you said, those that were there now became leaders and managers of people, and they might be absolutely dog shit, at the job. Like you said there, that guy whose claim to fame was the colonel's driver. He's done a week's course. Um, we call it a PSD course, but in
Right.
reality, what are you going to learn in a week, and what you're going to be able to apply with that week's training efficiently? Very fucking little. But like you said there, that guy will as someone's manager, ops manager, team leader, and the guy might be an absolute fucking liability, if you know what I mean.
Well, he was a complete tosser. I mean, I will never mention his name, but that company was a shit company, anyways. I mean, me and Meadsy touched on it, but I still won't name that company because we have a legal suit on them. They actually were violating a lot of laws, and anyways, this last gig that I did, that I got the lung infection on, they similarly did the same thing. But what they did, even with this last company, come income tax time, baby, they marked me as an employee. So all that shit that fell out of the birds, if I flew, anything that I had to replace, it came out of my pocket, and I can't even write the fucking shit off. I had to buy my own plane ticket to get the. Of course, we always have the money to fly home. That's what we do. But the real deal is, I took a wash on it in taxes. I got taxed for every cent that I earned. And the reason for that is because the bastards marked me as an employee. They did not tell me I was an employee, and neither did that other company. And so there'll be litigation on that one. But this is the reality of it. I mean, shit, with that company, that was 2009. So we're looking at 10 years this has been in litigation.
There is a lot of. I mean, you look now, the fuckery that's going on the circuit, it's just unbelievable. If you were telling the guys out on the ground that this is what the reality is in 2019, back in 2003, they'd look at you and go, "It can't be that bad." It is fucking horrendous. Um, the supply and demand now is totally flipped on its head. You've got the demand of very little, and the supply is fucking immense. The circuit is saturated with guys, and I'm not just talking shit cunts like your chefs that have got out and joined the CP circuit, or your HR specialists in the military that have got one on the CP circuit. I'm talking paratroopers, special forces, infantrymen that have got a massive wealth of operational knowledge and experience that can't find jobs because it's so saturated,
Yep.
and because of the massive drop in interest in budgets, and obviously that's reflected on the contracts. These companies are no longer getting $800 million for a fucking 4-year contract. They're probably getting a third of that, over the same amount of distance for the same amount of responsibilities. But now they've got to handle that contract because, and at the end of the day, a private military company, it's a business, whatever you want to call it. It's a business, and its sole job is to glean profit. So how do you get that profit from a third of what you were on 15 years ago? and it's at the bottom end. It's the bottom line. Do you pay that special forces operator $1,000 a day? No, you don't. You pay him at probably $300 a day, $400 a day at tops. And then his second in command, he's probably on, probably $50 to $100 less than that. They're no longer big bucks jobs, unless you're really looking, you're falling in with a good contract. And obviously, these special forces guys are going onto the higher end contracts. They're looking for work out the corner of their eye, going, I'm not doing this shit for this shit money. When on the other team, there's a chef doing it for the same money I'm on. His skill set's worth more, so they're moving on. So now you're finding that companies are massively underpaying the guys, and therefore, and you no longer have a full team of let's say Westerners. You haven't got a team of like Brits, Americans, Dutch, South Africans, New Zealand, Aussies. Nowadays, you'll find like you've got one or two guys in a team, and then the rest of the team will be third country nationals. They'll be either paid Iraqis or they'll be Nepalese. And when I say Nepalese, I don't mean Gurkhas. I just mean Nepalese or Fijians that have never been in the military. You know what I mean? That will accept a lot less. Where back in 2004, 2005, a team of 4 people was costing upwards of $5,000 a day. Where nowadays they can get that same team or the same amount of manpower on a fraction of the price. The only people they're paying like semi-decent wages to is the team leader and the team 2IC, your deputy team leader, your DTL, your 2IC, whatever you want to call him. The rest of them, they can just fucking throw $400 at for fucking 5 people. You know what I mean? And that's what these guys are paying, because it's that saturated and companies that aren't looking for high-end operators, where it's not as bad as it was, and there's processes in place. There's a lot more people doing it. So and all you've got to do is, as an annex to that, is look at the MARSEC work, the maritime security. I've had very close friends of mine on 4 months trips down to Indonesia, and they've rang the wife fucking 200 miles off the coast of Indonesia, and she's told them we haven't been paid this month. So he's landed in Indonesia, trying to get in touch with the company. The company's liquidated. And what I mean liquidated, it's basically just changed names to avoid tax and bankruptcy. Not paid him, and now he's stuck in Indonesia.
Yep.
With and that's how they get around it. There's so many guys coming out of the MARSEC world purely because of this fuckery, and there's no sort of guidelines to protect these lads.
Well, there's a prime example I can give you. The last contract that I did, that was with Special Operations Air Wing mission, and it was static on me, so I didn't expect much. But I was talking to some of the operators, and they're talking $500 a day, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's really collapsed.
Yeah.
And we're talking SOG dudes, and they're all good dudes. I mean, even the people I worked with were good dudes. You'll never hear me talk smack except for a couple people. Like, I've given this example. I don't know if I've done it on my show, but 2 dudes that were actually really funny. One dude was a Vietnam veteran. This was that first company. Both of these are examples from the first company. The second company, there was nobody like that. They were a bunch of young dudes trying to make their way, and they were decent dudes, so I have no beef with any of them. But the first company, this is what I got. First, the Vietnam vet comes in, and I'm kind of a gear queer, and he's got a new backpack. Maxpedition, which sometimes I'll use those little gear bags. And he's like, "Let me show you what's in it." And I'm like, "Cool, man," because I want to see, what knife you're carrying, whatever, right? And he pulls out these cards, and I said, "That's good. That's an awesome thing for the static gig. You'll be able to play cards inside your inside the ADOC while you're working there." He goes, "No, they're my kill cards." And now we're hold up. This gets better. And the second one's even more of a Lulu. This was hilarious. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, if they overrun this place," and I'm going to tell you where the place is so you'll really laugh your dick off. I can drop one by everybody's head that I killed, just like I did in Vietnam. And I said, "You look around here. You got big army all around you." It was on VBC, Victory Base Camp, which also is the airport, right, in BIOP. And I'm like, if they get through big Army, big Marine, big Air Force, and they're coming to you, you're going to be fucked. So you're not dropping kill cards by anybody. And I said, that's not going to happen. So why are you even talking about it? But the dude just looked at me and said, you don't know what you're talking about. Guess what? VBC's still there. So whatever. And the second thing that makes me laugh, this dude, I'll never forget him because he was an interesting. That's the thing about doing this business is you meet interesting dudes. And this dude's got shorts on. It's a static gig, so who cares? Got long green tube socks on, like you have in scouts, and boots, right? And when I'm talking about shorts, I'm not talking about your guys' below the knees, almost to your ankle pants that the Brits like to wear. I'm talking about shorts where they're above the knee. It was slightly above the knee. And anyways, and he's got a shirt on, like a Under Armour t-shirt on. And he's got a slouch hat that's all camouflage. One side of it's pinned up to the side of his head. And I look at him and I'm like, I'm going to talk to this dude. So I go over there and I'm like, hey, man, how's it going? He's like, pretty good, pretty good. And I'm like, good, man. So where are you going to go? What you going to do? And dude's telling me where he's going to go and what he's going to do. And I'm like, okay, that's a fuck all job. I'm thinking in my mind. And I never say this shit to these people. I'm telling you what's going on in my mind. And he's like, yeah, I figured since I'm a mercenary now, I need to look like one. And I said, dude, you are under a contract. You're not a mercenary. You don't even know mercenaries. I said, I get that you want to be stylish. You want to make your own impression. I get that because you can. But, hey, dude, here's the real deal. If you throw around the term merc, and if you ever met a real merc, and I said you might be meeting one right now, I was like, there'd probably be a fight going on. So, and no mercenary ever calls themselves a mercenary. You're a consultant. You're everything but a mercenary. You're
An advisor.
an advisor. Yeah. It's all bullshit. That it's a fantasy land for a lot of these fuckers, and they'll go in it. Anyways, I got my own 2 cents on that. Go on, brother.
Yeah. So, like you said there, with the interesting amount of people, you do get the right amount of people, but then obviously you get the wrong amount of people, and there's numerous stories, especially from Iraq, where it's gone fucking wrong because they've had the wrong people on board, who might have appeared to be the right people, but there's only so many background checks you can do, and let's be honest. If it's a contract, let's say if it's a DoD contract, and they've come to a British firm for it, the DoD, be it all singing, all dancing, as big as it is, still has no access to MOD files. So if I work for a DoD contract, they couldn't have a look at my MOD military file unless
Yeah,
you know
your
what I mean.
records.
There was an agreement there, and vice versa. If we had
Right.
an American contractor working for an MOD under an MOD contract, we wouldn't be able to check whether he's talking shit or not. It could be Dev Grew, or it could be fucking 76 fucking shower and bath battalion.
Right. You're right.
There's no way of telling who these people are, and that's why a lot of it nowadays is word of mouth. It's reputation. Going into the circuit nowadays, a saturated circuit is nigh impossible to get a half decent contract out, or a contract that's going to last and have some longevity to it, as in rolling from contract to contract. So it's very word of mouth, and you've got all sort of a portfolio nowadays. I've worked with these guys, I've worked on this contract, and so on and so forth. So it's quite a difficult word to get into now, and it's something that we will come on to is the honour of it all, as the show goes on. But
Oh
what I
yeah.
think, yeah, we'll touch on sort of like the mercenary work, and mercenary work, albeit not as sort of not as big now, if you know what I mean, as it used to be. I want to say as big. I'm talking a lot of the private military, the private security contract world companies have drawn a lot of those people away from mercenary work because they've legitimised that work. If you think being a mercenary was and still is illegal in a lot of countries, across the world, and
Even in the
it's funny.
U.S.
It's funny because there's very good brothers of mine who are serving still in the British Army, um, were ex South African military, and because now they're working for, even though it's in the Commonwealth, but inverted commas, a foreign government, they're seen as mercenaries, and there is some problems with them going back home. I think the rules have just changed over the past few years, but I know a very good friend of mine used to have to fly into a neighbouring country and then get a charter flight to go home to see his family.
Well, I can
Which go on.
I can give you a prime example on a personal note before you jump into your buddy. When I flew in to Gatwick Airport to go see my brother Blackie, I don't know how many years it was since the Gulf War that we linked back up again. Our wives, they were great friends. They're still great friends. It was just such a good time. But for them to let me, I had the address to him, his name, everything. Your guys' immigration service was like, well, what are you doing? I said, I work for a U.S. company. This is in '05, September of '05. Or no, yeah, it was October of '05. I just lied to you. I'm trying to remember back. Anyways, he lived in Cheshire. He was coming to pick us up. And they even went outside and talked to him. He was waiting for us in the airport. They found him. And they were like, I guess they paged him or something. And it was only because I was like, yeah, he was a Royal Military Policeman. And we worked together during the Gulf War. And they're like, well, but you're over in Iraq right now fighting a war. What are you doing here? And I said, trying to see a brother of mine. It really pissed me off, but they finally let us go through. But Blackie's like, yeah, they came out and talked to me and Susanna. And that's a fact.
Yeah. Again, but what winds me up on that, it's the wrong people that they're stopping. If yeah. And again, that's a conversation for another day, because it goes on to sort of like these jihadi fighters and shit like that coming back to our nations, and the action or the inaction that's taken against them. Yeah. So going back to sort of the mercenary work in the 90s. Um, I won't mention what unit I was, and I certainly won't mention his name. It was quite a strange tale, and he thought he'd got away with it. Well, he had got away with it, but he thought he'd done it undiscovered. Just after the Bosnian War started, in the former Yugoslavia, obviously there was a lot of mercenaries going there fighting for different sides, primarily for the Bosnians and the
I
Croatians.
remember that, yep.
Not so much the Serbs, because the Serbs were just doing their own thing. They were just fucking butchering hundreds of thousands of
Plus,
people.
they didn't trust anybody but Serbs.
Yeah.
There's like maybe 10 dudes I know that went over and fought for the Serbs. And one of them actually was on a UN mission, and he was a police advisor. And he had a big price on his head. And the Serbian police respected him so much, dude, they gave him a PKM with 3 boxes of linked ammo because he had a hit going out on him. So in his little chalet, he was upgunned, and that's a for real deal.
Yeah. So yeah, this guy from my unit who I knew pretty well. I mean, we weren't good friends or anything, but we knew each other. We were acquaintances, and we did some work out in Bosnia, um, back in 95 or something like that, and it was only a few months after I'd come back. I'd picked up a book from one of these discount bookstores, and it was called Mercenaries, and I think you can still buy the book. And I flick through this book, just having a look, and it goes on about different conflicts where mercenaries have been used throughout the ages,
Yep.
and it comes to the Bosnian War, and I'm going through it, and then there's these Bosnian military stood there, like Bosnian paramilitary, and there he is, stood in this guy that I know quite well. There he is, stood in Bosnian uniform, paramilitary uniform, with the Bosnian paramilitary cap badge and our unit cap badge on the same berry.
Right.
Basically, when we come back from there, sorry, before we'd gone to Bosnia, a couple of years before, he'd gone out there on leave. Obviously, the military thinking that he's sat at home with his family over summer leave, which I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks long. He'd gone back out, he'd gone over there and done some fighting with the Bosnians. And I'm like, no, that fucking can't be him. That must be a mistake. Anyway, when I looked at it was him, and I could tell it was him because obviously he had our regimental cap badge there.
Right.
So it was obviously this is after when we'd done the tour in Bosnia. Anyway, so the platoon I was in, it was quite a sort of like a specialised platoon, and he'd just joined the platoon as one of the platoon sergeants. So I sidled up to him and I said, obviously, how are you doing, mate? Yeah, not so bad. I said, did some work out in Bosnia, didn't you? And he sort of looked at me with a strange look on his face. He said, we all did. I said, no, back, you know what I mean, back in 92, 93. And he sort of looks at me with this sort of like look of realization on his face as if, fuck, someone knows. And he goes, how the fuck do you know that? Anyway, so I said, give me 2 minutes. I went back to my room, and brought the book down to the platoon office, and I fucking slapped the book in front of him. There you go. He was like, fuck, he goes, I didn't even know that photograph existed. I went, there you go. He said, who else knows about this? I went, nobody. I've kept it to myself. So, you know, there was mercenaries serving most of my ex forces, but it's that sort of that the romantic side, you know what I mean, of being a mercenary, a soldier of fortune, as you want to put it, and
A dog of war.
yeah, a dog of war. You know, applying your trade of what you've been trained for all these years, and you're putting it into practice. Because remember, this was prior to the global war on terror and the invasion. You know what I mean? So the 90s, even though they were a busy place, they were a busy time, a busy decade. I mean, we still had Northern Ireland going on. We still had the Falklands commitment there. But actually, war fighting, door kicking, putting rounds down range, it was quiet, if you know what I mean. Yeah, and it was the same for you guys. After the first
Yep.
Gulf War, there was a period of peace. You know, albeit there was like random fucky little conflicts around the world, but there wasn't the kinetic action that we were seeing in the early 2000s. You know
I
what I
like
mean?
to I like to call it. It was the time of free willing,
Yeah,
and when you talk about the circuit, I want to be very clear to people. There was an established circuit at one time where it was a phone call. This is back before computers, folks. So you have to understand: are you working? Yes or no. And if you are you happy there? Yes or no. And you never talk money. Never on any job did a professional talk money because you knew the money would come and you would talk about that later. But where's it at? Generally, you're not going to get exactly specifics. This was real. What is it for? They would tell you, PSD, protect, nouns, person, places, things. And then the following question is, what do you want me to do on it? And they'd tell you. And if it's screwed from that position, i.e., they want to change what you're going to do, let's say illegal arms running or something like that, that's totally illegal. Because in the U.S., it is a crime to be a mercenary. I've been a consultant, never been a mercenary. Nobody can prove it. But the bitch of it is you do get captured in a lot of photos, which makes me laugh because a photo is a moment in time. But that photo can be so misinterpreted by whoever the observer is. And if you don't think that's a fact, look what they did to General Michael Flynn over a picture that we now know was set up by the Clinton campaign with a Russian female, and they tried to say, well, he was sleeping with her. This is how Obama threw him out of DIA. And that's a fact. And then they smeared him under Trump. And because of that, Trump threw him out as being one of his advisors, which I hope he brings him back. Because Mike Flynn did do his job when he came back for Trump. He actually was a pedophile hunter, and he knew where the bodies were buried. He was DIA. And that man, along with so many other people, Petraeus, I worked under him in '05, '06. He was in charge of training Iraqi police, military, and border patrol. And he was a good man. And look at how many good generals that last communist administration smeared. And so we may have a good president now, but I don't expect a knock on the door saying, we got a set of silver bracelets for you to wear as you get in my car for a while. You there? Or did you
Yeah,
drop? All right.
no, I'm still there, buddy. I'm still there. I'm still here. Yeah, it's a difficult one to touch on. It's again, it's what we're going to come round to is that honor. That honor thing is like they are whipping boys. They're scapegoats. A lot of private military companies, you know, and I'm using private military.
Expendable.
I'm encompassing everything under that PMC tag. So private security. I'm just going to call it the PMC. Okay. I mean, you look at Blackwater and how Blackwater was working for the CIA. The CIA then dropped the ball and pinned the fuck up on Blackwater. And Blackwater, because under legal obligation, they weren't allowed to say who they were working for, couldn't defend themselves in court. You know, Eric Prince was standing in court himself saying, look, this is not how we're doing. You know what I mean? This is our contractor. You know what I mean? The contractor, we're the contractee. It was the contractor's responsibility. That's why it fucked up. And Eric Prince did say that he'd be very reluctant to work for that three-letter organisation again. But because it's big government, they've got the money and they could put the hands over people's mouths and say you're allowed to say this, but you aren't allowed to say this. You can defend yourself in court, but you can't say why you're defending yourself and who you're defending yourself against. So, but that goes from the very
Right.
top right down to what I mentioned earlier is quite a while ago, like I said, is a man's word is his bond. Now, transitioning from military to civilian, where in the military world, your word is your bond, because a lot of the time that's all you have. You know, especially in circumstances where you wanting people to do things that can put themselves and others in harm's way, where your word is your bond. That's your guarantee that you will or will not do something. Um, you know, and
Indeed.
I quickly found that that has no real weight in the civilian world, where and unfortunately that has spread into the world of contracting. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not all contracting. It's just because it's such a saturated market now, and there is such short demand for these jobs. They're very sought after these jobs. So instead of having 5 people go for one job, you've now got 500 people going for one job,
Yep.
and to get that contract, it's easy to smear someone's name by either outing truths or mistruths. You know, I
I've
know
seen
guys.
people. I've seen people. One guy is a para, who's a verified para, who I've worked with, and I saw a dude say, "Oh, he's a total Walter Mitty." And I also worked with a dude that he was a good dude. He was a basic dude. I'm not getting into his name. He was British, and when I worked for, I think it was it was Democracy International and USAID. It was on that contract. Uh, he had some shortcomings on the contract, but once he left, everybody's like, he did this, he did that, and I said that doesn't shock me. He told me about it. There's some medal you guys have. I don't know, some high honor medal, and somehow he came across an old one or something. And for shits and grins, he was trolling. He was a young kid, and it was his. I know at least it was his second contract. Um, I've worked with other dudes. It's been like their third, fourth, fifth. But this one particular dude, sold the metal, and the way he sold it on eBay, and he told me, he goes, look, a lot of people think I'm a Walter because I sold this metal on eBay, and people thought, like, the way he wrote it up, he had won it, and he showed me the thing, on the computer.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I could see how they could say that. And he goes, I just want you to know it was a mistake. And it was after that. Well, it was the same job that I was talking about that was a shit job in '09. And he's one of the people I never mentioned just because I don't want to shit on him. I'll never talk about his name. But he was honest with me. And I looked at the guy and I said, he told me about that. And this is what happened. And I said, you can call him a Walt if you want. I said, but he was honest about it, and he really felt bad. He was a territorial. This guy was a territorial, and somehow he came into possession of whatever metal, and somebody bought it from him. And then, I guess there's numbers on the metals, and they
Yeah.
realized that metal didn't belong to him, and he became a Walter Mitty. But it was because he was a moron, and he didn't write it up right.
Yeah,
And,
because when we
yeah,
get to show our medals, they'll always have your regimental number, your number, rank, and name actually imprinted on the sort of the rim of the medal underneath. Yeah, so you can always tell if you've been issued a medal, that it's your medal. But
right.
on the flip side to that, if you do lose medals and you get replacements from our medal factory, where you're at the medal department of the MOD, a replacement doesn't get your number, rank, and name on there. But if it's got somebody else's number, rank on them there, then obviously that medal has never been given to you, or you've acquired it through other means, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally get it. I mean, but if you looked at the write up, but if you met the guy, he, he have you ever met dudes? And I know we both met dudes that they're just not purposeful liars.
Yeah,
And I'm pretty good at spotting a liar. And because I had to lie for a long time working for the U.S. government, so I know when I was lying. Uh, and so I'm pretty good at spotting these fuckers. And with him to come out first off and say, this is this, and it's just like if I forget something, even if I forget it, man, I'll say I just lied to you. Because it could be off a month, it could be off 2 months. But I'm not going to justify my lie. I'm just going to say I just lied to you. Period.
yeah,
It doesn't matter. I misremembered. That means fuck all in this community, and that's what honor is. You can't teach honor. That's one thing I learned so heavily while doing this. There were dudes when I was in the Marine Corps that didn't believe I was in the Army on Adak, Alaska. They're on my Facebook now, and they're seeing the pictures from ADAC, and they're like, "Oh, you were there? Yeah, I know what you're doing. You're shitting your pants because, look, a photograph is a moment in time. We can always travel back to the past, and certain things can't be denied. But I also didn't have those photos with me when I was a Marine because at the time of that time, Classic Wizard was classified. Guess what? It's no longer classified now. It became HARP. Same fucking thing, different program and different place. And that's the kind of shit that you have to deal with when you're dealing with in the U.S. Blackie had a couple awesome pictures. My wife's like, I've never seen these. And I was like, Blackie, will you send me some copies? He said he would. I haven't gotten them, but I hope I do get them. But the important part is I was like, that's classed. That's classed. And he's like, you Yanks in your class, you're all morons. And he's just like, it's just me and you in front of that. And you remember who took it? And I'm like, yeah. And so, but it didn't matter, man. I mean, in my opinion now, I've just come to that opinion that it's all bullshit, man. They just want to fuck us. Anyways, go on, brother. I'm sorry I went on a rant.
No, no, but it ties into what we're going on about. It's like all that honour thing, that your word is your bond. Like Jack Bauer, if you look at Jack Bauer, I give you my word. And when Jack Bauer gives you his word, it's fucking set in stone. And it's very much the same in sort of I would dare say, certainly in some military units, and what was in the contractors world, where your word was your bond. And on that, it was like your word was your reputation. where you know yourself, brother. If you
Exactly.
lose your reputation on the circuit, you are fucked. And even to this day, if you're working on big contracts, good contracts with good people, and you fuck up and you don't own that mistake, or you let others take that mistake for you, and it's found out, your reputation's screwed, and therefore you just might as well throw in the towel because you're done in that line of work.
Well, that's why I always lead with mistakes, even if I've made them on my channel. The one thing that's funny to me is everybody who I've worked with knows when I've made a mistake, and the one with Meadsy was hilarious because Meadsy was pointing out this, that, and the other. He found this funny ass photo of me he took where I have my admin. My admin was 4 bags, okay, coming into Iraq, and this is in 2009. But he said, "Here's Shuff with all these 4 bags of all this gear, and there was 2 of everything." And I said, "Yeah, the reason why is you bitches would want to borrow a multi-tool. You'd want to borrow this. You'd want to borrow a knife. You'd want to borrow whatever. You might need a bag." He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I carry my own admin. And if I don't have it, my wife will send it. She's my logistician." And it just cracks me up that people don't realize, that's the only reason I'm a gear queer is just from, dude, I've went out to the field. There was an epic knife I had at one point. I still have the first knife that was epic, but this one I bought, it wasn't as epic, but it was a good knife. And lost it on an op. And guess what? I didn't have a backup. Same thing with sunglasses. I had 2 Varney glacial glasses, with the leather shades on the side, so you wouldn't get snow blind on Adak, Alaska. And it was because if I lost one, I had a backup. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, it's I've always been a very strong sort of like advocate of overpacking because that's what it is. Overpack. I always take too much shit with me. I can go away
Me too.
overnight. I've I've got my pack and fucking usually a grip bag with me. Um, but again, it's obviously I know we are digressing now, but it's always good to have a little digress now and again. It's that old adage of two is one is none, and especially
Yep.
that runs true in sort of the SF circles. Um, and it's what I've always taught my lads, and as I've mentioned this on a show before, that if you don't have it, I don't want to hear you fucking whinging about it. If you're cold, if you're wet, if you can't do this, I just want you to fucking make it happen. You know what I mean? You suffer on the inside because of your shit admin. And I won't lie. There's obviously times where in my career, my military career, where I've not had things that I should have had. I've never bitched about it because at the end of the day, one, you look a cunt, and two, you don't want to be seen. You know what I mean?
By
It's
your
that reputation.
brothers.
It's that
Yeah.
reputation.
Yeah.
It's that reputation. Look, he didn't bring it, and now he's whinging about it, and now he said that he can't do this, or Baz has done this. He can't do this
It,
because he's not brought it. You just fucking improvise, adapt, and overcome. You know what I
it
mean? That's
it's
the unwritten mantra of the infantry. You know what I mean? You just make it fucking happen.
it's the same
And
thing. I was in control of a certain thing, and one guy was bitching, another guy almost killed him. Right? Uh, in perspective, you have to understand he didn't stand with him, but the guy also, I know the backstory on it, was not in a position to help him because it's complicated. I don't want to get into it, but the funniest part is this dude's bitching, and I'm like, "Why are you wenching, dude? This this dude's fucking doing his thing. You were doing your thing, and you're still alive. Why are you bitching? You're still alive." And I never got that, even with that kind of a thing, because all it is divisive. It divides people, and you can't have that in the unit. And I ended up getting rid of the wincher.
yeah, again, because it's that reputation. Obviously, if he's whinging and he's going to have a shit reputation, therefore he's not an achiever. And let's be honest, everybody likes a good whinge now and again. It's the
Right.
soldier's prerogative to whinge, or a marine's prerogative to whinge. You know, because that's all we can do. but there's whinging, and then there's whinging to the point where, look, it's your fault that this is happening. And it's very much the case, going back to our original sort of subject, in like the world of contracting. If you know that your reputation is damaged or could be damaged, again, like my mantra, I've always said it, brother, and you know I've always said it, is share your victories but own your mistakes. If you fucked up,
Yep.
you need to own it quickly, to not just to protect the mission. Again, those inverted commas, not protect the mission, but protect your fucking own reputation, to protect yourself. Because at the end of the day, especially in contracting, that's all you've got. You haven't got regimental pride behind you. You haven't got that military covenant saying, if I fuck up, what they're going to do? They're going to, what you have, Article 15 or UCMJ, we've got our guy 67. You know what I mean?
Right.
All they're going to do, the military's going to just smack you on the hand and say, don't be a fucking spastic. Where out in the contractors world, it's pack your bag and get on the next fucking flight out.
Your
You know what I
window
mean?
or aisle. Pick it.
That's you done. That's you done on the circuit. And getting a contract after that, especially if there's people from that contract moving on to the next contract, hipping, like you said, and you're applying for that, it's like, don't fucking take him on. He's a shit cunt. And therefore,
Yep.
then it's not just that last contract where your reputation's now fucked. It's on the next contract, because it spreads, word spreads. You know what I mean? And that's the only word that is bond in some places, and it's the bad word, and that's what people take at face value without getting to know you first or giving you the opportunity to rectify or make up for the fucking mistakes that you've made. Again, especially nowadays where there's so few jobs and so many people, where they can afford to turn around and say, pack your shit, get the fuck out, because there's another 500 people behind you. Some may be better, some may be worse than you, but
Yep.
they can afford to do that. And therefore, it is a savage world, and that means that word now, that your word is bond, doesn't really mean much.
Right. You're
Because it's been diluted. It's been
yes.
diluted through
Yes.
the cutthroat actions of some members of that industry, just looking out for number selves, or not so number one, but it's, I tell you what, mate, I'll get on this contract. Don't worry, give me a month, and I'll get you onto it, and I'll put my hand on my heart. I've got friends now saying, I'll get you on a contract. I've got job offers for Afghanistan, for certain jobs out there, and they've said, don't worry, we can get you on this contract. And some of these people are, sitting 3 levels above the job that they're offering me,
Echelons
so
above reality, brother. No,
yeah,
you're exactly right. Just like you and I have talked about this before. A certain guy by the name of John. That's all we'll say. We'll say his name. I will name and shame him one day. But you remember, you were a part of it. You knew what was going on. KMC. A lot of people knew what was happening with this cat. And so me and another bro, we both wanted to snuff him out. And there was a job that was potentially going to happen. And, of course, it didn't happen because of John. And but I got all the blame. And they said I said something that I did say. I said I was something I was not at that time, just to sniff him out. And it was so funny. Me and Breeze talked afterwards, but the other guy was not read in. He didn't understand what we were doing. He was just on the Skype call. There was 3 of us, or 4 of us. And all of a sudden we bust this dude out heavy the next day. And guess what? The only thing, because that guy was mad, he didn't get the job. Well, the job fell apart because John was a fucking complete cunt. And you know what I'm talking about, and that's all I'll say. But that's the real shit. But you have to own it. I said those words. Bree said his words, and it happened. And who cares? Because in the end, we snuffed out, and I ended up having to go. You remember I called you from Arizona and told you, watch out, get rid of him. And because I wanted to face and confront him. And that was a whole big fuckery. So, you know what's up.
Like I said, there was a good job there was an ocean between us, brother, because obviously obviously he was using the things that I'd said to him as well. Yeah, but again, we
Yes,
won't go
indeed.
too much into it. We won't go too much into it. There was that. It wasn't so much his word wasn't worth much, but it was calling into question the words of others, the words of me, the words of you, the words of Breeze, and others in that circle, your close circle, your extended circle. You know where that could have been damaged to you, and like you said, that contract fell through because of the dishonesty of another person.
Yep.
Lying, adding things to his resume that weren't true. They said this, I've done this with this person. Again, just scrabbling for that job. And there is that these days. But in my eyes, it's still a very honourable profession, you know.
Me too.
And it is. I'll never turn around and slate the profession. There's been mistakes made in that profession, both at ground level and at corporate level, and I'll call it corporate level because they are corporations at the end of the day. They're there to make profit. They aren't there for the good of the land. You know what I mean? For a sense of duty. They're there for fucking profit. You know what I mean?
And
Eric Prince. Yes, there is a sense of duty there, but Eric Prince wants to make money. You know what I mean? The triple canopy, the blue hackle, the Aegis, all the rest of them, control risks. Everybody's out there to make money, and even rolling down to the contractor. Very few contractors do it purely because they're like standing on a gate in Afghanistan. They don't like getting shot at on a fucking regular basis by Iraqi insurgents. There is that element of excitement that is missed.
And
yeah, go on.
We need to police ourselves better, just like I put myself out there for that cunt. I don't feel ashamed about that a bit. I exposed it. We lost the job, whatever. But here's the point being. We need to police our own better. And I mean look, vetting people is for real. You have to vet them. And if you don't vet them, then that's not my problem. It's your problem, and now it became everybody's problem. And so if somebody has an ass sore over it and wants to smear you, fine. I've said it publicly. You've said it publicly. We've all said it. You know, you find somebody, you have to expose them if they are lying. I've never said anything that I can't back up with a DD-214 or an SF-51, Standard Form 51 from the federal government. And except for one thing, which was debate this dude. And when I said debate, I didn't mean debate. You know, we weren't in a debate. I was baiting him to go a step too far. And then when I went out for a certain gig, I found out he was a complete and total tosser. And John will always be exactly that. But I saved the community. I exposed him. I mean, think about it. Remember the dude that he tried to fuck around with?
Yeah.
Who was an actual operator, and they were friends.
And still is.
Oh, really? You still friends with him?
No. I mean, this guy's still an operator.
Yeah. And so that's what I mean. But everybody's been warned. You know.
Yeah, and it was difficult to let that person know because he was on the very edge of our circle, you know what I mean, on the fringes. So there is still that trust element there of approaching and saying, look, this guy that you're embedded with, he's an absolute fucking lizard. You know, he's not what he's saying at all. He's got probably 2% of the skill set that he said he's got, and you know, he's a danger. But I'm glad that message was relayed to that person.
Oh, that dude could operate, but the problem is his decision-making capacity I saw on display. Yeah. This is something I haven't really told you about. No, I did tell you about it. I haven't said it on my podcast. This guy one night, I bullshit you not getting into specifics of everything, but everybody had a good time one night and had some drinks. Nobody had, you know, anything other than some drinks, and you have civilians in the mix. So Just add the civilians, see the problems that can happen, right? Well, this guy said something to John. John puts him in handcuffs. I bullshit you not, bro. This is why when I called you, I said, dude, this guy is fucked up. Um, did everything wrong that he could do. He puts him in handcuffs, take him back to the little office we had, which was a bullshit thing, but whatever. Like is interrogating him, and not violently, but being a cunt. And then the guy's like, "Well, you're not a cop. You have to undo the cuffs." And then he comes up to me, "Are you gonna back me up?" I said, "Dude, you just fucking imprisoned somebody that didn't need imprisoned. I'm not backing you up." Fucking cops came, and I said, "He's the problem," and that was the reality of it. And guess what? The cops there did absolutely nothing. He's still out there, folks. That kind of person is the kind of person I'm talking about.
Yeah, I quickly severed him and people like him from my circle rather quickly. Um, and I was lucky. I was in a position where I could take things further. You know what I mean? I could have where
Right.
it was I didn't have to then worry about it. When I say that, it's nothing ominous or anything like that. But I was in a position there where it was quickly severed from my circle, and he was kept at distance. And I think
Ditto.
you know what I mean by that, brother. But
Yep.
again, it's that danger that pollutes, that one drop of oil that pollutes the fresh pond of the good work our contractors do out there. And it's a difficult world to get into nowadays. I don't envy people. And to be honest, when I was hearing my guys, especially in my platoon, going, "Oh, I'm leaving the military and I'm going to go and do contracting," I did my hardest to talk them out of it. Not because they were shit. I had some outstanding good operators. You know what I mean? Some of the best snipers I'd seen.
Right.
There's some of the best operators. But I was saying, look, it's not as cut and dry as you think. They're not really after guys that can shoot someone in the head at fucking a mile and a half. I'm exaggerating, but
Right. I
it's
get
it's a
you.
different world. Guys were thinking that they were going to leave the military, jump on a contract, and they're doing the exact same thing that they were doing 8, 9, 10 months ago in Sangin or Musakala or Baghdad. It's totally different. It's Yes, you're still in that circle of ex-military, which is it's predominantly populated by ex-military personnel. There is obviously your law enforcement and your very few sort of civilians in there that have managed to. One of the lucky ones that got onto the contracts nice and early back in the early 2000s and picked up a good skill set where they've actually embedded themselves and can operate because they've been a fresh slate. They don't have those bad sort of habits that the military drill into us. So it's a learning, as my friend
It's a
said, and as
learning curve.
I learned on certain things. It's a learning curve for I would say both sides of the fence, for those leaving the military and for those coming in that have got very little knowledge. Obviously, it's a steeper learning curve for them than it is for us. All we need to do is forget things where they've got to relearn, where they've not relearn, but they've got to learn everything. You
They
know,
got nasty habits. Look, we're getting deep into the woods. We are now at an hour and 15 minutes. This is going to have to go into a second show. Hopefully, you dictate today, and we will put it up. We're going to have to do this more because we have scratched the surface, folks, on the real deal of what's going on and within the contracting community, because he's exactly right. It's a lack of policing our own, although we try to do that. Um, it's a lack of weeding out the people that have psychological and emotional issues. And anyways, with that, Baz, you take the last words. I'm going to play a few seconds of something that'll probably get this video. No, I'm not going to do that. I want this video to stay up. I was going to play the Expendables, Diamond Eyes by
yeah.
Shinedown. So I better not do that because I don't want this video pulled down. It's too much of a treasure. It gave a lot of knowledge to my son, and hopefully the folks get something from it, because every podcast I do, look, I had years of not being around my son and my wife. And so this, along with my book, when it does come out, this is a time capsule, folks, except you're hearing my real words. And you'll be able to go to my book, and guess what? It'll be line by line, except I'll name names in that book. So John, you'll know who John was. And, yeah, well, you know.
Card smart. You're
Yeah.
fucking card smart, John.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's coming. It came within the community. I still laugh about that. But still, there's other people that were involved on that. In hindsight being 2020, I should not have had a potential person for a job that I figured once he said the things he said, and then I went down and confirmed it, I was like, fuck, dude, this job is going nowhere. And I had to be, I'm going to be very honest. I'm the guy who actually called the primary, the money guy, and said, don't use me, because this guy's got everything compromised and he knows everything about it. I'm the one who stopped that contract. I'm being very frank on that.
Yeah, you owned your mistake, brother. That's what counts, because you've upheld your honour. You protected your reputation. The reputation was tarnished, but you had the guile and the moral the mineral background to turn around and say, look, it's gone all fucky on my end. Look for another contractor.
Yeah.
And again, that's what's important. And at that point, mate, that's all you can do.
That
You know
was.
what I mean? That's all you can do. Let's say your word is all you've got, and that's what you've protected. You could have gone on with that job and reaped the benefits of that job and left the contractor in the lurch, the primary, to pick up the fucking pieces.
And
But
who knows?
long run, what would that have done for you? It would have shut that door, possibly on that career, or because of that one bad decision.
No, it would have shut the door on all my brothers too, because they would have sussed him out. And one guy did suss him out and didn't give me forewarning as I was going down there. I mean, I love the guy. He's not a bad dude. I'm not dissing on this dude, and I'm not even going to say his name. But he's like, I could have told you that before I went there. I went and met him, and I was like, well, me and Breezy met him, and things happened, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, dude's totally off the chain. And he's like, yeah, I could have told you that. And I said, why didn't you? And I have more of a problem with him. Look, I sacrificed my name in order to figure out what was going on. And I've done that several times in my life, and I'm not ashamed of it, because I will know the truth. Others may not, but I will know the truth. It's just like when I got my visit, brother. I looked at both of them and I said, yeah, the guy I'm pictured with, yeah, he's an FBI guy. He's one of your CIs, one of your confidential informants. And this other guy, by the way, I know for a fact he's also been turned. And I said, so they're COINTELPRO. And see, that's the whole thing. Nobody wants to look at how deep this tunnel burns. Once somebody does something and they are put into positions, do not think they're not going after an end game. And it sounds like conspiracy theory, but once a conspiracy theory, and I'm telling you right now, has been proven fact, what does it become, Baz? It's no longer a theory, is it?
No, it becomes part of history.
And an actual conspiracy.
Yeah.
But it's being done by your government, so it must be okay.
Yeah, it's not conspiracy if it's done at government level. It's just policy.
Yeah. Policy is a bitch.
Be it black or white policy, it's yeah.
Yeah.
That's another conversation.
That is, brother. I love you. Anyways, man, folks, this is why I bring Baz on. Me and him are in our comfort zone, and I love this man like you would never know. He's an honorable man and a decent man, and hopefully, for the people who are criticizing the sound, we went to Skype this time. Hopefully, it's not as mismatched as everybody was upset with me on the last one, where we were both talking and you can hear us both. They were saying they couldn't hear me. And that's why I said, well, let's try to do it on Skype this time. Yeah. And thank you all for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. Honestly, Baz, thank you for coming on. We are going to have to do a show. When do you want to do it? Next week sometime?
Sunday sounds good if you're free.
I'll be free for you, brother. And remember, Memorial Day was a couple days ago, and that's in America. It's called Decoration Day also. That's how it started. And never confuse these two things, folks. Memorial Day is to not celebrate our fallen. It is to remember our fallen. It's also to remember your ancestors. And don't get these two confused, because then Veterans Day comes up on 11/11/11/11. And the thing is, you have to understand, that's the time when a living veteran wants to hear, thank you for your service. Because on Memorial Day, we're more concerned with remembering our fallen. The people who stood next to us, and I don't give a fuck what country they were from, they stood. Will you stand? I don't know if you will. I know Baz will. I know I will. I know everybody in the Pipefitters Union will. What I don't know is what you'll do. Will you stand on principle, on honor, on loyalty, on undying loyalty, by the way? Will you do that? Or will you melt away and be nothing but cattle and livestock? Okay? So with that being said, stick around, Baz, because we'll talk for a second after I'm done. And thank you for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. You've now gotten an awesome talk from me and Baz on the realities of and the differences of merc work, mercenary work, and contracting. And that's that's an important. This is a primer, bruh, because we're gonna go deep into it the next time too. Much love, brother.
It's been a pleasure.
With that being said, Shuff out.